I fear that it might do it again. Maybe I'll put my face on after the end of this presentation. Okay, so good day to you all from my behalf also. I'm Janne Heliölä from the Finnish Environment Institute in Helsinki, Finland. And I have been working there for about 20 years now, mostly involved with pollinators one way or the other. And the biggest task has been coordinating the Finnish butterfly monitoring scheme since 2001. But today I will be talking to you about bumblebees. So the background of this project lies in the global concern for pollinators, which we all here today also share. And in recent years, the loss of pollinators has also been much debated in media here in Finland. And new actions are on their way to improve their situation. Perhaps the ultimate fear for many people is something like this headline regarding China. But fortunately, we here in the Baltic states and Nordic states are still very far from this situation. So much better here at the moment. So about the background of this project here, one of the government's political responses to this concern on pollinators was to launch this 3-year research project, so-called Heliölä project in Finnish. And it consists of 3 work packages. First of them aims to find out what has happened for the Finnish pollinators in the past. So we're using historical data on the occurrence of pollinators to seek out their past trends, while the third work package concerns the economical value of pollination and pollinators, namely the honeybees and their significance for crop pollination. But today this presentation is about the second work package, which aims to establish a national bumblebee monitoring scheme for Finland. So the main goal of this task was to design and pilot this ongoing bumblebee monitoring scheme. And as the first task, we started to compile data on what are the methodological options we have to do this monitoring. There are several ways to monitor and get data on pollinators. There are band traps, point counts, transect counts. And for some of these, we already have experiences from here in Finland, and we also collected evidence from other countries. And after that, we selected the most suitable method and aimed to adapt it suitable here in the Finnish conditions. And after that, we sought volunteers to test this monitoring in practice. And in the end of this project, we will make a proposal for the government on how to start this ongoing monitoring scheme after the year of 2021. Luckily, we didn't have to start from scratch. There are already several ongoing bumblebee monitoring schemes in Europe, most oldest of them being ones in the UK and Ireland. The Beework survey has been going on for quite some time already, and it was an excellent example for us to learn on how to do things also here in Finland. So because of the previous experiences from other countries, we selected the transect counting as the best suitable method. And some of you may be familiar with this method already. It means as a starting point, you design this kind of transect, meaning a walking route. or each recorder separately, and the location of the site is free to decide for the volunteers, and usually it's near their own home or summer cottage or some other place that is quite familiar to them. And it shouldn't be too long, less than 1 kilometer, half a kilometer perhaps, and it should be on a relatively easy terrain to move, so going along pathways or road margins, and it shouldn't take too long to walk the transect. And lastly, it is then divided into around 10 sections according to each habitat type that there are on the site. And this transect counting method has been used for butterflies for quite some time. It was originally developed for them in the 1970s. So the counting of bumblebees in practice means that you walk the designed path on a slow pace at least once a month, repeatedly throughout the summer from May to August, and preferably more often, once a week would be ideal. And while you're walking, you should keep count of all butterfly or bumblebee species and individuals that you meet within a 5 by 5 by 5 meter area, so you don't count the bumblebees that are too far away. And these bumblebees should be identified as well as each recorder can, either on a species level or species group level, or if need, you can just count them as any bumblebee individual. And the ultimate goal for this monitoring is pretty much the same as for butterflies, which serve as a good model for monitoring, because in Finland we already have data for butterflies from 1999 onwards, and also they have been monitored widely throughout Europe since the 90s. And we can use the same method for both collecting data and analyzing the monitoring data. So there is a clear model on how to do this work here with bumblebees. And the goal is to produce annual abundance indices, either for each species, as here is shown for butterflies in Finland on the right, or if needed, then indices for species groups, or at least the total abundance of bumblebees altogether in each year. And from these species level indices, you can of course make different kinds of collated indices for, let's say, species of open grasslands and forests separately. And below here you will see a European level butterfly indicator for the grassland species. That's one of the EU level indicators used for pollinator diversity. But when we started to design this monitoring scheme, the biggest problem we had faced was to find out motivated people to do the recording, and also people who would be able to do it. Because in Finland, anyway, there are far more people who can identify, let's say, butterflies and moths than those who can identify bumblebees. So I would say that the group of people who can identify bumblebees in field for on the species level is less than 50 people altogether. And these few experts often have many other interests regarding rare species or threatened species, so they often don't have the time or interest to monitor the common species which are met throughout the country. So for these reasons, we felt that we'll need to train our own own new experts during this monitoring scheme or in the establishing phase of it. So the solution was to lower the bar for the people to participate in the monitoring and also allow room for inaccuracy, as few people were already experienced to do this work, so most of them are beginners who have little or no experience from any insect group. And there's also a problem with the bumblebees as a group, that some of their species are quite difficult to identify in the field, even by experts. So for these reasons, we took the option of allowing people to record the individuals either by species level or species group level, or if need be, as only bumblebees. So for the most beginners, this is the reasonable way to start, at least in the first summer. So we have been doing this for 2 summers now, and it showed out that this bumblebee monitoring brought out quite many new people in the company of insects and pollinators. The people who took part in this monitoring have been quite different kinds of people from the more conventional insect experts. Most notable difference being that most of the lepidopterists here in Finland are usually elderly men, retired men in their 50s, 60s, even 80s. But on the contrast, most of the people who volunteered for our monitoring are quite young, starting from 20 to 50 years, and also most of them are women, which is quite different to the past. So it seems that bumblebees attract a very different kind of group of people, and this is very good for the insect monitoring and insect community in Finland altogether, because it has brought quite many new people among these. And we are expecting that people are learning by doing, so within the 3 or 4 years, up to 5 years at most, you would expect that they learn to identify more accurately the bumblebee species which are occurring on their own monitoring sites, because there are not that many bumblebee species altogether. At any given site, you usually find 5, 10, or at most 15 bumblebee species. So the group of species is not too high, so it can be learned with some time. And it seems that the recorders have been quite happy with the monitoring scheme, and most of them are quite willing to continue this work in the coming years. But of course, quite many of them admit that identifying the species is quite difficult, and for this reason, over half of the individuals recorded so far have been other than species level records. So here's some figure from the first year, 2019. Then we had 70 sites monitored in Finland, a bit less than 9,000 individuals from 28 species out of 37 species altogether. So the species pool recorded was quite good. Only the most rare ones were excluded. So about one third of the individuals were identified by species level, and less than half was identified on species group level. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of variation in the amount of recorded bumblebees per site. Usually it has been around 100 individuals during the summer within 4 counts, so it is not a very big number of individuals. At the moment, the records for this year are still on the way. Part of them, about 15, are still missing, but it seems that we will have about 100 sites for this second year, which is quite well considering that the butterfly monitoring has gone on for over 20 years now, and it usually has less than 50 sites. So already in the second year, we have twice that much. At the moment, there is no analysis on the data of the 2 years yet, but it's already seems that this summer was better for bumblebees than the last one. But of course, we will have much more interesting data after, let's say, 10 years or something. Individual years are quite different for most bumblebees, so it's very difficult to make comparisons for each individual years. And we would expect that the results for this year are available by Christmas time. So next, the results for the 2 test years will be reported during next winter. And it seems that we will continue monitoring already next summer, even though the project is ending. And during next year, we will also make this official proposal on how to start this monitoring on a regular basis, which this is just a testing phase now. And we will need to identify who would be the responsible party. Is it our institute or someone else? And also identify what is the funding and other resources that are needed for this monitoring. And this monitoring would produce quite valuable data on the status of our pollinators and help, therefore, support the national pollinator strategy, which is still in preparation and should be available next year at this time. And the goal is to start functioning on a regular basis in the summer of 2022. Well, that was all I had to say, so thank you. Feel free to ask questions if you have.
Yes, thank you very much.